I'm going to do a review of Dark Matter by Blake Crouch. It's a really good sci-fi parallel worlds novel. It's brilliantly creative. It's what I expected from Blake Crouch. I've only read one other of his books, Divergence, which is an amazing book, and I wasn't disappointed. Not as good as Divergence, but it's still a very good book. It's very vivid and well written, good pacing, good story. He describes the scenes well. When you're reading it, you can picture it in your head. It's more than a page turner. It's a page burner. I burned through the book. I really enjoyed it and wanted to find out what happens next. Why did that happen? Why is this going on? What's going on with that character and that idea? Yeah, real page burner. Very good characters. This is maybe one of the very few weak points in the novel. The characters are good, but they're not great. You read it for the writing and the story and some of the interesting sci-fi ideas about parallel worlds and things like that, but not necessarily for the characters. I wouldn't want to come back to those same characters in another book because they're not particularly exciting or interesting or even fun. But it's a good story and they're solid characters. There is some unexplored potential in the book because he's dealing with parallel worlds. I think he could have gone further, and not necessarily he didn't need to make the book much longer, but he could have made the worlds a bit more interesting. Some of them, they do come off as feeling a little bit tepid sometimes and not particularly interesting. Although some of them are really good. The ending's quite good. I don't think it's a brilliant ending, but it is good. I enjoyed it. And overall, it is an extremely enjoyable read. So I would give it 9 out of 10, and I highly recommend it. Okay, that's the end of my review, and I'm going to do a spoiler discussion now of the novel. So I think the book, it basically does everything right at a really good level, but it doesn't necessarily do anything brilliantly, except maybe for the main concept, the main idea of building a Schrodinger's cat machine, which allows you to access space-time and enter all these different parallel worlds. I think that's a brilliant idea. The execution and the novel and the characters don't match the quality of the idea, the quality of the setup and the story, but it's pretty, it's close. It's close, and it does have some brilliant highlights in the book. It's very interesting in terms of the kind of sci-fi philosophy of it. What would happen in your life if you made these different choices? That's fun to think about. And it's obviously very creative, very Blake Crouch in the sense that he's just got a really creative mind and he writes that really well. He puts his creations down on paper really well. More could have been done with the parallel worlds. That was probably the biggest disappointment of the novel for me. For example, I did really like the cold world. I thought that was one of the highlights of the novel. The first world they enter is this kind of radioactive abyss, and they get out of there very quickly. The virus world is good. It's a scary part, and there's lots of tension, and you sort of thinking, oh, hurry the fuck up and get out of there. That's certainly a good part of the book. But I do think he could have, for example, there was one of the many versions of the main character mentions having been in a hell world, and this kind of drives him a bit crazy. It's fun to mention the hell world and leave it up to the reader's imagination, but to be perfectly honest, I would rather just you don't have to give me like a full chapter in the hell world, but maybe just show me it a little bit in the book. If you could have figured out a way to incorporate that, that would have been cool. Or some other particularly interesting world, like the world that they enter, the futuristic Chicago kind of world. It's just boring. It's almost like, Greenpeace Village. It's so dull, and they enter this nice big glass skyscraper. The writing's very descriptive and it's very pretty, but it just kind of washes over you, and I wasn't particularly interested in the vast majority of the worlds. Most of them are just kind of tepid, but there are some very good ones. That said, I do think he could have done more in exploring these parallel worlds, and possibly even made the book slightly longer. I'm not criticizing the length. There's nothing I despise more. All right, there are things that I despise more, but I hate books that are too long, basically, because they're boring. I don't like books that are unnecessarily long. I'll read a 50-hour book, War and Peace, no problem. But if the book is unnecessarily long, it's one of the greatest crimes that an author can commit. The ending was very good, but I think he could have done a better ending. I don't mind an ending being predictable. The job of an author isn't to write a gotcha ending or provide a great twist. It's fine if it's predictable. I just don't think it was a particularly great ending. It was good. It was good. The main guy gets his family and they head off to a world chosen by his son, which it's a nice ending. It's good, but I think that it could have been a lot. It could have been more. Like, you could have had thousands of the main character coming out and doing all sorts of crazy shit. It could have been really fun at the end, but I think he sort of stopped short and just went with a bit of a more obvious ending. He could have really gone nuts at the end. That would have been a lot of fun. There's no major plot holes that I could identify. Maybe there are, but I couldn't find any, which that's great. There's some really great highlights in the book. For example, I mentioned the snow world, and the part where he becomes homeless is it's a fun, kind of chilled out section of the book. And when he's discovering what happened after he enters the first parallel world, that's good. So it does have those highlights. The virus world was another one. I really enjoyed the virus world. I thought that was a nice tense moment. The book isn't as good as Divergence, which is a brilliant book. I'm going to review that soon. Divergence is a must read. I would say that Dark Matter, it's not a must read, but I would highly recommend it. I think it's a very fun, well written, well thought out sci-fi book, and it's not too long, so you don't have to invest much in it. Yeah, highly recommended. Quality stuff.